My family absolutely loves Mexican food, and one of our favorite foods is carnitas. And most people think that carnitas are always made with pork, but carnitas simply means little meats. So today we're going to be making beef carnitas.
For beef carnitas, you're going to need a 2 to 3 pound beef chuck roast, a medium onion chopped into big chunks, 1 clove of garlic crushed, 1 tablespoon of chili powder, a half teaspoon of oregano, a half teaspoon of ground cumin, 3 tablespoons of orange juice, kosher salt, 1 dried New Mexico and Guajillo chili pepper. You'll need beef broth, flour tortillas, and your favorite toppings. For our side dish today, the Mexican rice, you will need a cup of long grain rice, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cumin, a 1/4 teaspoon of oregano, a 1/4 teaspoon of chili powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. Again, you'll need 1 dried New Mexico and Guajillo chili, beef broth, water, and frozen peas.
Now the process for making beef carnitas is very similar to making pork with a couple extra steps. We're going to start actually with a couple of dried peppers. I have a New Mexico pepper and a Guajillo pepper, and what I want to do is I want to rehydrate these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a cup of beef broth, and then I'm just going to snip the ends off the top of my peppers. And I'm going to put these on the stove and I'm going to let them boil for about 15 minutes and just let them sit until I'm ready to use them. Now for this recipe, I'm going to be using about a 2-pound chuck roast. You want something that has a little bit of marbling in it, but you want a decent amount of meat because this will actually feed a nice large family. So let's go ahead and cube this up. Now we're just going to go ahead and just cut our beef into some pretty big chunks. Now mine I took out of the freezer this morning and it's still just a little bit frozen on the inside, but that's okay because this is going to cook for a good while. But you just want some nice size chunks. Okay, so we've got our beef cut up into nice chunk size pieces. There's going to be some pieces that are kind of fatty. Leave those in there. You want to cook them in with your meat. A lot of people end up over seasoning their food with herbs and spices because they've taken all the fat out. Fat is flavor. You don't have to eat it in the final product if you don't want it, but it adds wonderful flavor while you're cooking. So we are ready to brown this and start putting the rest of our ingredients together. Just like when you're making pork carnitas, you do want to go ahead and brown your meat just a little bit. Again, I'm using my trusty Cuisinart slow cooker. And into the bottom of my cooker, I have put just a little bit of avocado oil. And I'm just going to drop my chunks of beef down there into the bottom. And just like with pork carnitas, you want to just kind of sprinkle a little bit of kosher salt on top. And we're just going to let these brown. I'm going to turn them over. I'm going to do that for all of the meat, and then we'll be ready to start putting the rest of our ingredients in.
Now you just want to brown these. Give them a light crust on the outside. You do not want to cook the meat through. When I have all my meat browned, I'm going to set it aside, and then I'll be ready to get the rest of my ingredients together.
Okay, so for this recipe, you really don't need a lot of ingredients. We're going to be starting with a medium-sized white onion, and you just want to cut these into big chunks because you don't want these to just kind of melt away while they're cooking. You want some pieces left over that you can serve inside your tortillas, so just nice big chunks. And then 1 clove of garlic, and again, you just want to smash it and just get that paper off. And you're just going to drop it in just the way it is here. And then we're also going to be using chili powder, about a tablespoon, a half teaspoon of oregano, a half teaspoon of cumin, and 3 tablespoons of orange juice.
While I was preparing my meat and my vegetables, I allowed my peppers to boil in the beef broth, and now we're ready to process these into a wonderful sauce.
Okay, so our peppers have boiled for 15 minutes, and if you take a look at them, they do look a little bit differently than when you put them in there. Now, you want to get rid of the seeds, and the easiest thing to do is just to take your kitchen scissors, just cut them open, and then you can either use your fingers or use a knife and just scrape those seeds out. And once you do that, you want to take these and you want to cut them up into small pieces so that we can put them into our blender. Now, when it comes to cutting up your peppers, these do not have to be tiny pieces. We are going to put them in the blender, but we do want them to be able to mix around a bit. So you just want to kind of snip them up. You want to make these easy to blend. Save you a little bit of time. And I'm going to put these in the blender with the rest of my liquid that they cooked in, and we're going to turn this into a sauce. Okay, so into my blender, I'm going to put my pieces of my guajillo and my New Mexico pepper, and I'm going to put some of the juices from when I boiled it. Now, I do want to strain this because there are seeds in there. And then I'm going to just add a pinch of kosher salt, and we're going to blend this up. I've returned my beef to the pot, and I want it nice and hot, and then I'm just going to add in the rest of my ingredients. I'm just going to drop my big chunks of onion just right on top. Then I have my chili powder, oregano, cumin, orange juice, and my clove of garlic. And what I want to do is I want to add my liquids next. And I want to start with the sauce that we made from our guajillo and our New Mexico chili. You just want to sprinkle that up there on the top. And then I'm going to use beef broth just till the meat is covered. Now the hard part is done. I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to bring this to a boil, and then I'm going to turn it down and let it simmer for about 2.5 to 3 hours. Now, whenever we have carnitas, one of my family's favorite side dishes is Mexican rice, and we have a very simple recipe, so let's take a look. For this recipe, you're going to start kind of the same way that we do for carnitas. You're going to use 1.25 cups of beef broth. Now this time I'm not using the stuff out of the box. It has a lighter flavor. I have gone for the powdered beef broth because you can mix it up just a little bit more stout. And I'm just going to pour that into my pan. And then again, I have my peppers. I have a New Mexico pepper and a guajillo, and again, you just want to snip the ends off of these. And we're going to put them into our broth and boil them for about 15 minutes, and they'll be ready to start the rest of the process. Now for the rest of our recipe, we're going to be using 1 cup of long grain white rice. This is the slow cook version. You can make this with minute rice. You just want to decrease the amount of time that you cook. We're also going to be adding heaping 1/4 teaspoons of chili powder, cumin, oregano, and kosher salt. And then between 1/8 and 1/4 cup of frozen peas. I've never quite been sure why we put peas in Mexican rice, but it's always there and it adds a nice spot of color. So after our peppers finish, we're going to puree them just like we did before, and then we're going to be ready to add our other ingredients. Okay, so now we're ready to go ahead and start our rice. Just like before, I have taken my peppers with the boiling liquid and I have pureed it. Now I pureed it a little bit finer than I did for the beef carnitas because I don't want big chunks of pepper in my rice. I just really want the flavor. And when you're cooking rice, especially if it's the slow cook rice, you're going to use double the amount of liquid than rice. And so what I want to do is just add enough water. I'm using a cup of rice, so I just want to add enough water to reach 2 cups. And I'm going to go ahead and pour that into my pan. Now I'm using the same pan that I used when I hydrated my peppers. And into this liquid, I'm going to add our seasonings, our kosher salt, our chili powder, the cumin, and the oregano. And I'm just going to whisk those in. Now, I'm not adding any butter or oil to my pan. I have all of the flavors in there that I want to use. And after I get everything mixed in good, I'm just going to go ahead and add my rice. And I'm just going to bring this up to a low boil and then turn it down to simmer for about 20 minutes. You want to make sure that you come back and stir it as you're going, because you don't want your rice to stick, and you want to make sure that it has enough liquid in it that it doesn't burn. I'm not going to add the green peas until we get to the very end. I don't want them to be soggy. I still want them to have just a little bit of pop. Once your rice starts coming up to a simmer, you do want to turn your heat down. You don't want it to boil, you just want it to simmer. And you do want to cover it, and I'm going to set the timer for 20 minutes. Checking on our rice, we have about 6 minutes to go, and it's looking a little bit dry, so I'm just going to add just a little bit more liquid. I want my rice to be tender, and I don't want it to burn. I'm not worried about having too much liquid because I can always drain that off at the end, but I do want nice, tender rice. So our rice is done, so we're just going to go ahead and put this in a serving bowl. And now is when you want to add the green peas. Now, if you don't like a lot, don't put a lot. I'm not a super huge fan, but I do like the little bit of color. And you're just going to stir this in. And you're ready for dinner.
Our meat has been simmering for about 2.5 hours, so now I'm just going to scoop it out of the broth, and I'm going to place it on a foil-lined cookie sheet, because after the initial cooking, we want to put these in the oven and let them crisp up on the outside edges for just a little bit. So I'm just going to spread these out over the cookie sheet. Now I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of kosher salt on the outside, and I'm going to put them in a 400-degree oven for about 10 minutes on each side. These have cooked 10 minutes. I'm just going to flip them back over, add a little more kosher salt. If they seem a little dry, you can add a little bit more of the liquid from the pan, and then these will be ready to eat. These carnitas are absolutely beautiful, and they are fall apart tender, so all you have to do is serve them on their own or wrap them in a flour tortilla with your favorite toppings. I hope you enjoy this recipe as much as we do, and remember, the best thing about being the cook is you get to do the taste test. Thank you for watching. I hope you like this recipe, and if you would like them to continue, be sure to like, comment, and share. Thanks, guys.